Welcome to my channel. Value $quarter. The 1974 Canadian 5-cent coin bearing the inscription Elizabeth II D.G. Regina is part of Canada's long-running 5-cent coin series, commonly known as the nickel. This coin was issued during the reign of Elizabeth II and reflects Canada's monarchic constitutional system, where the British monarch is also the sovereign of Canada. The Latin inscription, Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, appears on the obverse front of the coin and translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This phrase has been used on many Commonwealth coins to affirm the monarch's traditional title and authority. In 1974, Canada was under the government of Pierre Trudeau, and the country was in a period of social change, economic development, and increasing cultural identity separate from Britain. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II that appears on the 1974 5-cent coin was designed by the famous British sculptor Arnold Machin. Machin's portrait shows the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a well-known royal tiara that appears on many Commonwealth coin designs from the late 1960s onward. This portrait replaced earlier designs used on Canadian coins and remained in use for several decades, making it one of the most recognizable images of Queen Elizabeth II on currency around the world. On the reverse back of the 1974 Canadian 5-cent coin is the famous beaver design, created by the Canadian artist George Edward Kruger Gray. The beaver sits on a small rock or mound, with the word Canada above it and the date, 1974, below. The beaver is an important national symbol of Canada, representing the country's history in the fur trade and its reputation for hard work and perseverance. The beaver design has been used on the Canadian 5-cent coin since 1937 and is considered one of the most iconic coin designs in Canadian numismatics. The coin itself is made primarily of nickel, which is why Canadians often refer to the 5-cent coin simply as a nickel. Canada historically produced many coins from pure nickel because the country has large natural nickel resources, particularly in regions like Sudbury, Ontario. The standard weight of the 1974 5-cent coin is about 4.54 grams, and it has a diameter of approximately 21.2 millimeters. The edge of the coin is plain, smooth, rather than reeded. The coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, the official mint responsible for manufacturing Canada's circulation coins, collector coins, and bullion products. The Royal Canadian Mint operates major facilities in Ottawa and Winnipeg, though by the 1970s most circulation coin production had shifted to the Winnipeg facility. In 1970, the Royal Canadian Mint produced a very large number of 5-cent coins to meet everyday economic demand. The total mintage for the 1974 Canadian nickel was approximately 78 million coins, meaning it is quite common today. Because of this high mintage, most circulated examples of the 1974 5-cent coin have only a small collector value, usually close to their face value unless they are in exceptionally well-preserved condition. However, coins in uncirculated or mint state condition can be worth more to collectors, especially if they display strong luster and minimal wear. Numismatists, coin collectors, often grade coins using a scale ranging from poor, P1, to mint state, MS, 70, and higher-grade examples can command higher prices in the collector's market. For example, a typical circulated 1974 Canadian nickel might be worth only a few cents above face value, but an uncirculated example might sell for $1 to $5 CAD, and extremely high-grade certified specimens could be worth somewhat more depending on demand. The 1974 coin also sometimes appears in official Canadian proof-like sets produced by the Royal Canadian Mint for collectors. These sets contain coins struck with specially polished dies and carefully handled planchets, resulting in coins with sharper details and more reflective surfaces than ordinary circulation strikes. Collectors of Canadian coins often seek complete year sets, meaning they try to obtain at least one coin from every year of issue, and the 1974 nickel is a common part of those collections. From a historical perspective, the continued use of the beaver on the 5-cent coin symbolizes Canada's heritage in the fur trade era, when beaver pelts were a major economic resource that helped shape the development of the country. Companies such as the Hudson's Bay Company were deeply involved in this trade and played a significant role in the exploration and economic history of Canada. The beaver eventually became such a strong national symbol that it was officially recognized as the national animal of Canada in 1975, just 1 year after the 1974 coin was minted. Because of this symbolism, the design has remained largely unchanged for decades, making the Canadian 5-cent coin one of the most stable and recognizable coin designs in the world. In numismatic studies, the 1974 Canadian nickel is often used as an example of the standard circulation coinage of the late 20th century. Unlike rare coins that attract attention because of errors or limited mintages, the 1974 5-cent coin represents everyday currency used by millions of Canadians in daily transactions, such as buying small goods, paying for transit, or making change in shops. Over time, many of these coins have become worn through decades of use, and some are gradually removed from circulation due to damage or loss. Nevertheless, large quantities still exist, and they remain a familiar piece of Canadian currency history. Occasionally, collectors also look for mint errors or unusual varieties among 1974 nickels, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or planchet defects, which can increase a coin's value significantly if authenticated. In summary, the 1974 Canadian 5-cent coin with Elizabeth II D.G. Regina is a historically interesting but common piece of Canadian coinage. It combines the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Mackin on the obverse with a classic beaver design by George Edward Kruger-Gray on the reverse, symbolizing both Canada's constitutional monarchy and its natural heritage. Produced by the Royal Canadian Mint in large numbers, it served as everyday currency across Canada during the 1970s and remains widely collected today as part of Canadian numismatic history. If you want, I can also explain its current collector price, rare errors, and how to tell if your 1974 nickel is valuable the next top. The coin inscribed Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, with the date 1979 and value 5 cents, is a classic Canadian coin commonly called the Canadian nickel. It was issued during the reign of Elizabeth II, who was the monarch of Canada as well as several other Commonwealth nations. The inscription Dei Regina is an abbreviation of the Latin phrase Dei Gratia Regina, which means Queen by the Grace of God. This title has historically appeared on coins of British and Commonwealth monarchs and symbolizes the constitutional monarchy system in which the monarch's authority is historically derived from divine right but exercised through democratic government. In 1979, Canada was already a fully sovereign country, but it retained the British monarch as its head of state within the Commonwealth system. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on Canadian coins represents this symbolic role and also reflects Canada's long historical ties with the British Crown. The 1979 Canadian 5-cent coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, the official minting authority responsible for producing circulation coins for Canada. The Mint operates major facilities in Ottawa and Winnipeg and has been internationally recognized for technological innovation in coin production. The obverse front of the coin displays a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by the famous Canadian artist Arnold Mackin. This portrait, known as the Mackin portrait, was introduced in 1965 and used on Canadian coins until 1989. It depicts the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a historic royal tiara often associated with her official portraits. Around the portrait appears the inscription, Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, identifying the monarch. The reverse, back, of the 1979 Canadian nickel features the iconic beaver design, which has become one of the most recognizable symbols on Canadian coinage. The beaver image was originally designed by Canadian artist G. E. Kruger-Gray and has been used on the 5-cent coin since 1937, with only temporary changes during World War II. The beaver sits on a rock surrounded by stylized water lines, and above it appears the word Canada, while below it is the denomination 5 cents and the date 1979. The beaver is an important national symbol in Canada, historically connected to the fur trade that helped shape the country's early economy during the colonial period. Beaver pelts were once so valuable that they served almost like currency in parts of early Canada. The composition of the 1979 Canadian 5-cent coin is another interesting aspect. Unlike the American nickel coin, which contains nickel alloy, Canada historically produced its 5-cent coins using almost pure nickel. The 1979 coin is composed of 99.9% nickel, giving it a distinctive silver-gray appearance and strong magnetic properties. Because of this high nickel content, Canadian nickels from this era are attracted to magnets. The coin weighs approximately 4.54 grams and has a diameter of about 21.2 millimeters. Its edge is smooth, plain, rather than reeded. Nickel was used because Canada had abundant nickel mining resources, especially from the Sudbury region in Ontario, making the metal both symbolic and economically practical for coinage. In terms of mintage, the 1979 Canadian 5-cent coin was produced in very large numbers because it was intended for everyday circulation. Millions of these coins were struck, making them common in Canada during the late 1970s and 1980s. Because of the high mintage and the durable nickel composition, many examples still survive today in circulated condition. For most collectors, the 1979 nickel is not considered rare. In average circulated condition, it usually has minimal monetary value beyond its face value or metal value. However, coins in uncirculated or mint condition can have slightly higher collector value, especially if they show no wear and retain their original mint luster. Special versions such as proof-like coins included in official mint sets may also attract collectors. The year 1979 itself is historically interesting in Canada and globally. It was during the late Cold War period and a time of economic changes worldwide. In Canada, the Prime Minister during that year included Pierre Trudeau earlier in the year and later Joe Clark after a federal election. Although political leadership changed, the image of Queen Elizabeth II remained on the nation's coinage, symbolizing continuity of the constitutional monarchy regardless of which political party held power. Coins like the 1979 nickel therefore serve not only as currency, but also as historical artifacts reflecting the political and cultural identity of the country. From a numismatic perspective, collectors often examine several features when evaluating a 1979 Canadian nickel. These include the condition grade of the coin, the sharpness of the beaver design, the clarity of the Queen's portrait, and the presence of scratches or wear. Coins are graded on scales ranging from heavily worn good, G, condition to mint state, MS, levels for uncirculated coins. Because nickel is a hard metal, details on these coins often remain relatively sharp even after years of circulation. However, surface marks can occur easily because nickel is also prone to contact marks when coins strike each other during minting or circulation. Another point of interest is the magnetic nature of the coin. Since the coin is nearly pure nickel, it can be picked up with a magnet. This characteristic makes Canadian nickels from 1968 to 1981 especially distinctive compared to many other countries' coins. Later, Canada changed the composition of its coins to cheaper plated steel in order to reduce production costs. Therefore, coins like the 1979 nickel represent the last decades of Canada's traditional solid nickel coinage before modern changes to minting technology. Culturally, the beaver symbol on the reverse reflects Canada's national identity. The beaver became an official symbol of Canada in 1975 when it was declared a national emblem. The animal played a huge role in the early fur trade economy, particularly during the era of the Hudson's Bay Company, one of the oldest commercial corporations in the world. Beaver pelts were exported to Europe for making felt hats, which were fashionable during the 17th and 18th centuries. Because of this economic importance, the beaver became closely associated with Canadian heritage and eventually appeared on stamps, coats of arms, and coins such as the 5-cent piece. Over time, many collectors around the world have saved Canadian nickels as part of larger collections of world coins or coins featuring animals. The 1979 coin is particularly easy to find, making it a common entry point for beginner collectors. Some collectors also specialize in year sets, meaning they collect every denomination issued in a specific year. A 1979 Canadian set would typically include, in summary, the 1979 Elizabeth II D.G. Regina 5-cent coin of Canada represents a small but meaningful piece of Canadian history. It combines royal symbolism through the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, national identity through the beaver design, and economic practicality through its nearly pure nickel composition. Produced by the Royal Canadian Mint and widely circulated across Canada, It reflects the political era of the late 1970s, the country's natural resources, and its enduring connection to the British monarchy. Although the coin is common and usually not highly valuable, it remains an interesting collectible and a tangible reminder of Canada's the next top. The 1998 Canadian 5-cent coin bearing the inscription Elizabeth II D.G. Regina is part of Canada's long-running coinage series commonly known as the Canadian nickel. The phrase Elizabeth II D.G. Regina is a Latin royal title used on many Commonwealth coins. It translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This refers to Elizabeth II, who was the monarch of Canada and other Commonwealth realms from 1952 until 2022. The coin was issued under the authority of the Royal Canadian Mint, the institution responsible for producing all official coins of Canada. By 1998, Canada had already been issuing 5-cent coins for more than a century, with the denomination first appearing in 1858 when the country was still part of the British Empire. Earlier Canadian 5-cent coins were made from silver, but after 1922 the silver coin was replaced with a larger coin made from nickel, which is why Canadians began calling the 5-cent coin a nickel. By the late 20th century, however, the metal composition had changed again due to the rising cost of nickel. On the obverse front of the 1998 coin is a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Canadian artist Dora de Hunt. This portrait was introduced in 1990 and used on Canadian coins until 2003. It shows the Queen wearing a crown and facing right, with the inscription Elizabeth II D.G. Regina surrounding the portrait. The letters D.G. stand for Dei Gratia, meaning by the grace of God. This Latin wording has appeared on British and Commonwealth coins for centuries and reflects the traditional form of royal titulature used in monarchies. Around the portrait you may also see small details such as the rim and raised edge that help protect the design from wear. The obverse design represents Canada's constitutional monarchy system, in which the monarch serves as the head of state while the government is run democratically by elected officials. The reverse back of the coin features the famous beaver design, which is one of the most recognized symbols in Canadian coinage. The beaver was designed by Canadian artist George Edward Kruger Gray and first appeared on the Canadian 5-cent coin in 1937. The beaver sits on a rock surrounded by stylized water lines, symbolizing Canada's natural environment and the historical importance of the fur trade in the country's early economy. Above the beaver appears the word Canada, while below it appears the denomination 5 cents. The beaver itself is an important national symbol of Canada and even became the country's official national animal in 1975. Its presence on the coin reflects the country's heritage, natural resources, and the role the fur trade played in shaping the development of regions like Quebec and the Hudson Bay Territories during the colonial era. The 1998 Canadian nickel is made from 99.9% nickel, which was the standard composition used from 1982 until 1999. Because nickel is a durable metal, these coins tend to last a long time in circulation. The coin has a diameter of about 21.2 millimeters, a weight of about 4.6 grams, and a plain, smooth edge with no reading. In 2000, Canada switched to a plated steel composition to reduce production costs, so the 1998 coin represents one of the final years of the nearly pure nickel series. The coin's magnetic properties are strong because of the nickel content, which makes it easy for vending machines and coin sorting equipment to identify. The mintage of the 1998 Canadian 5-cent coin was quite high, with tens of millions of coins produced by the Royal Canadian Mint. Because of this large production, the coin is generally considered common among collectors unless it is in exceptionally high condition or part of a special mint set. Most coins found in circulation today show some wear from everyday use, but uncirculated versions preserved in mint sets may have a bright metallic appearance and sharp design details. Collectors often grade coins based on their condition using grading systems such as good, G, very fine, VF, extremely fine, XF, and mint state, MS. A typical circulated 1998 nickel usually has little collector value beyond its face value, but pristine examples or coins with errors can be worth more. Another interesting aspect of Canadian coinage is that the country produces coins in both English and French cultural contexts, reflecting Canada's bilingual heritage. However, the 5-cent coin itself uses mostly English text, while the royal inscription remains in Latin as part of historical tradition. Canada's coin designs often celebrate wildlife, national history, and cultural themes, and the beaver motif is one of the longest-running designs in the country's currency. Over the decades, the design has remained largely unchanged, which gives Canadian nickels a recognizable identity both domestically and internationally. From a historical perspective, the 1998 nickel belongs to a period when Canada's economy was modernizing and the Royal Canadian Mint was becoming one of the most technologically advanced mints in the world. The mint not only produces Canadian circulation coins, but also manufactures coins for many other countries. Its facilities in Ottawa and Winnipeg are known for advanced minting technology and innovative products, including commemorative coins made from precious metals like gold and silver. For coin collectors, the 1998 Elizabeth II D.G. Regina 5-cent coin represents a typical example of late 20th century Canadian currency. While it may not be rare, it is part of a historical lineage that stretches back more than a century and reflects Canada's connection to the British monarchy, its natural heritage symbolized by the beaver, and the evolving technology and materials used in coin production. Coins like this are often collected as part of year sets, monarch portrait sets, or thematic collections focusing on wildlife or national symbols. Even though its monetary value is small, the coin carries historical and cultural significance, representing everyday life in Canada during the late 1990s and the enduring presence of Queen Elizabeth II on Commonwealth coinage, the next top. The Elizabeth II D.G. Regina 5 cents 2009 Canada coin is a Canadian 5-cent circulation coin commonly known as the nickel, issued by the Royal Canadian Mint. Canada's 5-cent coin has a long history dating back to 1858, but the modern design with Queen Elizabeth II and the beaver has been used for many decades with small design updates. The 2009 issue belongs to the reign of Elizabeth II, who served as Queen of Canada from 1952 until 2022 and appeared on Canadian coinage for about 70 years. The inscription, Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, on the obverse side of the coin is a Latin phrase meaning, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. The abbreviation DG stands for Dei Gratia, by the grace of God, while Regina means Queen. This phrase has traditionally appeared on many Commonwealth coins to indicate the sovereign's authority as monarch. On the 2009 Canadian nickel, the portrait of the Queen used is the effigy created by Canadian artist Susanna Blunt, introduced in 2003. This portrait is notable because it shows the Queen without a crown, giving a more modern and realistic representation compared to earlier crown portraits used on older coins. The portrait faces right and is surrounded by the inscription mentioned above, along with the year 2009 indicating the year of minting. The reverse side of the 2009 Canadian 5-cent coin features the famous beaver design, created by Canadian artist G. E. Kruger. The beaver sits on a rock surrounded by water, with the word Canada above it and 5 cents below. The beaver is an important national symbol of Canada and represents the country's historical fur trade, which played a major role in the economic development of early Canada. The beaver was so important in the fur trade era that it eventually became an official emblem of the country. Because of this symbolism, the design has been used on the Canadian nickel since 1937, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in the world. The coin's diameter is approximately 21.2 millimeters, its thickness is around 1.76 millimeters, and its weight is about 3.95 grams. Unlike older nickels that contained actual nickel metal, the 2009 coin is made from nickel-plated steel, which means a steel core covered with nickel plating. This change was introduced to reduce production costs and improve durability. The coin also has a plain edge, no ridges. The year 2009 did not feature a special commemorative design for the nickel. It continued the standard beaver design used in most circulation years. Millions of these coins were produced by the Royal Canadian Mint for everyday use across Canada. While exact mintage numbers vary slightly depending on circulation and collector sets, tens of millions of pieces were minted, meaning the coin is generally very common in circulation and among collectors. Because of this high mintage, the 2009 nickel typically has very low monetary value above face value, usually only about 5 cents in circulated condition. However, coins in uncirculated condition, special mint sets, or with unusual minting errors may be worth slightly more to collectors. Some collectors also search for varieties such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or other minting errors that can increase value. Historically, the Canadian 5-cent coin has changed composition several times. Early versions, 1922 to 1981, were mostly made of pure nickel, which is why Canadians began calling the coin the nickel. During World War II and some later periods, the composition temporarily changed to other metals due to nickel shortages. By the early 2000s, Canada shifted to nickel-plated steel for most lower-value coins, including the 5-cent piece. This allowed coins to be produced more cheaply while still being compatible with vending machines. Canadian coins are also known for advanced minting technology such as multiply plated steel, a technique developed by the Royal Canadian Mint that improves durability and security. The portrait of Elizabeth II used on the 2009 coin reflects Canada's role as a constitutional monarchy within the Commonwealth. Although Canada is an independent country, the monarch serves as the ceremonial head of state. Throughout her reign, several different portraits of the Queen appeared on Canadian coins, each representing a different stage of her life. The Susanna Blunt portrait used on the 2009 nickel is unique because it is the first Canadian coin portrait of the Queen without a crown and designed by a Canadian artist rather than a British sculptor. This portrait remained on Canadian coins until the end of her reign and is considered a modern and dignified representation of the monarch. In everyday life in Canada, the 5-cent coin is used for small transactions, though inflation has reduced its purchasing power over time. Canada also discontinued its 1-cent coin in 2013, which made the nickel the lowest denomination coin still in circulation. Despite its low value, the nickel remains an important part of Canadian currency and is widely used in cash payments and vending machines. Collectors often include the 2009 nickel in standard Canadian coin collections that aim to gather one coin from each year of issue. The coin's design, featuring the beaver and the Queen's portrait, represents both Canada's natural heritage and its constitutional tradition. Overall, the 2009 Elizabeth II D.G. Regina 5 cents Canada coin is a modern circulation coin that combines historical symbolism with contemporary minting technology. The obverse honors Elizabeth II and the traditional Latin royal title, while the reverse celebrates Canada's national animal, the beaver, designed by G. E. Kruger Gray. Produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, the coin reflects Canada's long coinage tradition and remains a familiar piece of everyday currency. While it is generally not rare or highly valuable, it still holds interest for coin collectors and those interested in Canadian history, monarchy, and numismatics. If preserved in excellent condition or found with minting errors, the coin may carry additional collector value, but most examples remain worth their face value of 5 Canadian cents the next top. The 2016 Canadian 5-cent coin, often simply called the nickel, is a circulating coin issued by the Royal Canadian Mint for everyday use in Canada. The obverse front of the coin features the inscription Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, which is Latin and means Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This title refers to Elizabeth II, who was the reigning monarch of Canada at the time the coin was produced. Canada is a constitutional monarchy and a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, meaning the British monarch also serves as Canada's ceremonial head of state. The portrait of the Queen on the coin was created by Canadian artist Susanna Blunt and was first introduced on Canadian coins in 2003. It is notable because it shows the Queen without a crown, making it different from earlier portraits used on Canadian currency. Around the portrait appear the words Elizabeth II, the initials DG, standing for Dei Gratia, meaning by the grace of God, and Regina, which means queen in Latin. Beneath the portrait appears the year 2016, indicating when the coin was minted. On the reverse back of the 2016 Canadian 5-cent coin is the image of a beaver, one of the most recognizable national symbols of Canada. The beaver design was created by Canadian artist George Edward Kruger Gray and has been used on the Canadian nickel since 1937. The beaver sits on a small rock or mound, and beneath it appears the word Canada along with the denomination 5 cents. The beaver is important in Canadian history because of its role in the fur trade during the early development of the country. Organizations such as the Hudson's Bay Company traded beaver pelts extensively in the 17th to 19th centuries, which helped shape exploration and economic activity across northern North America. Because of this historical importance, the beaver eventually became a national emblem and was placed on the nickel as a tribute to Canada's heritage. In terms of physical specifications, the 2016 Canadian 5-cent coin has a diameter of 21.2 millimeters, a thickness of about 1.76 millimeters, and a mass of approximately 3.95 grams. Unlike early Canadian nickels that were made mostly of nickel metal, modern versions, including the 2016 coin, are typically produced using nickel-plated steel, which reduces manufacturing costs while maintaining durability. The edge of the coin is plain, smooth, rather than reeded. The coin is struck using high-precision minting technology at facilities operated by the Royal Canadian Mint, mainly in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Ottawa, Ontario. The Mint is internationally recognized for its advanced coin manufacturing techniques and produces coins not only for Canada, but also for many other countries. Historically, the Canadian 5-cent denomination has existed since 1858, when Canada was still part of the British colonial system and used a decimal currency tied to the dollar. Early coins were smaller silver pieces known as fish scales, but the modern larger nickel coin appeared in 1922 when rising silver prices forced Canada to remove silver from the 5-cent denomination. From 1922 onward, the coin became known informally as a nickel. Over time, its composition changed several times due to economic factors and wartime material shortages. During parts of the World War II, for example, Canadian nickels were made from tombac, a copper-zinc alloy, or steel instead of nickel. After the war, the coin returned to nickel composition before eventually transitioning to plated steel in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The 2016 issue was produced in large numbers for circulation and is generally considered a common modern coin, meaning it is not particularly rare in everyday condition. However, coin collectors, often called numismatists who study the academic field of numismatics, still collect these coins as part of complete date sets of Canadian currency. Uncirculated examples or coins preserved in mint condition may have a slightly higher collectible value, particularly if they come from official mint sets issued by the Royal Canadian Mint. Special finishes such as proof or specimen coins may also exist for collectors, often featuring sharper details and a more polished appearance. Culturally, the Canadian nickel represents a small but symbolic part of Canada's identity. The beaver design reflects the country's wildlife and economic history, while the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II demonstrates Canada's constitutional link to the monarchy. Even though Canada has modernized many aspects of its currency, such as introducing polymer banknotes and discontinuing the penny in 2013, the 5-cent coin remains part of everyday cash transactions. Millions of Canadians have used the nickel in daily purchases, vending machines, and cash exchanges. Because coins circulate for decades, a 2016 nickel may remain in use well into the future, gradually showing signs of wear as it passes from person to person. From a collector's perspective, details such as mint luster, strike quality, and surface preservation determine the condition grade of the coin. Professional grading services often evaluate coins on a scale from poor, P1, to mint state, MS70. A 2016 Canadian nickel in MS65 or higher condition may appeal to collectors assembling high-quality sets. Some collectors also look for minting errors, such as off-center strikes, double dies, or plating defects, which can increase a coin's rarity and value. Overall, the 2016 Elizabeth II D.G. Regina 5-cent coin from Canada represents a blend of historical tradition, national symbolism, and modern minting technology. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II connects the coin to Canada's constitutional monarchy, while the beaver design celebrates the country's natural heritage and early economic development through the fur trade. Though it is a small denomination coin used mainly for everyday transactions, it carries more than a century of Canadian monetary history and remains a recognizable piece of currency both within Canada and among collectors around the world. If you want, I can also explain its exact collector value, rare varieties, and how much a 2016 Canadian nickel can sell for today the next top.